Today we have a very exciting comparison because we are going to compare the Fujifilm X-H2S with the Panasonic S5iiX. And I'm going to try to help you decide which one is right for you. Alright, so first, weight and size. The X-H2S come at 680 gram, while the S5iiX comes at 740 gram. Both cameras are relatively compact, but advantage goes to Fuji. Now moving on to ergonomics. Now both cameras features Pass-on dial, front and back dials. They have dedicated button for ISO, for white balance. Now this S5iiX right here also have an exposure compensation button, but the X-H2S also has a function button that you can put to whatever you want. So it's quite kind of a similar design in terms of control. However, the X-H2S has more custom modes, with 7 custom mode compared to the 3 custom mode that you have on the Panasonic S5iiX. When it comes to the focus mode switch, I do prefer the focus mode switch on the S5iiX. However, I would say that if the Fujifilm kept the usual focus mode switch on the front instead of the button that it uses on the X-H2S, I would have preferred that one. Now, when it comes to general usability, the Fujifilm with the top screen here where you can see all the information with like the battery level, but also the amount of memory available that you have, is much more convenient when it comes to working with this camera because you have access to all that information at a glance. Another point that I want to mention is that the X-H2S, the Fuji, has much stronger dials, right? It's harder to turn them, and that's a good thing because there are many times where I was shooting with the Panasonic and I would hit the dial by mistake because it's super easy to change them. Like you barely touch them and they rotate. And for example, on this one, I use my shutter angle and I was constantly changing my shutter angle by mistake. And finally, when it comes to the grip and the way you can handle the camera, I would say that they're quite similar. The grip of the S5iiX is a little bit deeper, but not that much, so that's a tie here. So overall for the ergonomics, I would say advantage to the Fuji. Okay, so now let's discuss the EVF and the LCD screens of both cameras. The EVF on the S5iiX is a little bit brighter than the one on the X-H2S, so advantage on this side. However, when it comes to the screen, I do prefer the LCD screen of the X-H2S because it's brighter, it seems clearer to me, but overall I would say that it's kind of a tie here because the EVF is better here, but the LCD screen is better there. Both options are comfortable to work with, it's just that there are some minor differences. Now let's talk build quality. No surprise here, they're both built properly, they're both weather sealed. I think that the main difference between one and the other, I would say, is the screen that feels a little bit more robust on the S5iiX. When you play with the screen while it's flipped out, it feels slightly more robust than the X-H2S. So I would say advantage here on the Lumix for the build quality, but they are quite equivalent, honestly. Okay, so now let's talk sensor. Here you have a 26.1 backside illuminated APS-C tag sensor, and here, well, you have a full frame 24 megapixel CMOS sensor. The stack sensor will basically give you faster readout, less buffer time, and that's why Fujifilm released this camera, because they wanted to focus on speed and make sure that you are not limited at all by the sensor or the media. Here you have a full frame sensor, meaning that it will be a bit better, slightly, honestly, a little bit better in low light. So if it really depends on what you need. One is better for speed and has better, a little bit more megapixel, and another one is a full frame sensor. So if that's what you're looking for, then go with the S5iiX. But if you want more speed, if you want a little bit more megapixel, then the Fujifilm X-H2S is what you should go for. There's not a huge difference between connectivity because they both support full HDMI, you have a microphone and a jack, and you have also a USB-C port. Now the difference comes from the media. Here you only have SD cards, but you also have an SSD external support directly through USB-C. And here you have CF Express Type B support, which is not here. So here you have both CF Express and SD card. So it depends on your workflow. Is it better for you or not? That's a question that you need to ask yourself. but yeah, overall they just have two different workflows that you can work with. Personally, I think that the external SSD support is a great workflow to have in a camera because it makes it easier to edit your footage out of the gate without to have an extra step of copying data or to buy a CF Express card reader. Alright, battery life. There is no huge difference in terms of battery life here. This camera packs about 500 shots, while this one is at 450 shots. They are comparable in terms of battery life, but the Fujifilm is a little bit better in there. So advantage to the Fuji, but slightly. Now the way that those cameras address overheating, two different directions. Fujifilm released an accessory and a fan accessory where you can basically stick the fan here, right here, and this will help with heat dissipation. When it comes to the S5iiX, you already have a fan included in the camera that will help with heat dissipation, right? Now it's important to notice that if you want a fan on the X-H2S, you will have to pay $200 more to get it, while it is included here in the Panasonic. Now, if you have a fan on both solutions, they both won't have any overheat problem. With the X-H2S personally, I've never had any overheating problem shooting at 4K, 30 frames per second. I never use the fan, right? So overheating wise, I don't think that you will have any problem with any of these cameras. Now let's talk autofocus, because that's an important and crucial feature for most creators. In my test, in my limited tests, what I've seen is that the X-H2S has a slightly better autofocus than the S5iiX. Now the S5iiX has very improved autofocus compared to the S5 Mark I, because it went from a contrast-based autofocus to a hybrid contrast and phase detection. However, the Fujifilm X-H2S, with its stack sensor and its algorithm and new gen processor, is faster in my opinion and stickier than the Panasonic one. What I've seen in my test is that when I get further away from the camera, the Fujifilm will stick to the target, while the Panasonic will sometimes lose the target completely. Now, if rolling shutter is important for you, here you have a stack sensor that has a faster readout. And you can see in the test that I made that the rolling shutter is much more important when it comes to the Panasonic S5iiX. It's almost non-existent in the Fujifilm camera, the X-H2S, which is again because it has a stack sensor. So if that's something that is important for you, definitely go with the Fuji. Alright, here you have Vlog, here you have F-Log. Both log profile works very well. It's easy to work with either of them, and both have very good dynamic range. So it really depends on the workflow that you're the most used to. Honestly, I would not base my decision on either F-Log or Vlog. I would say that from what I read online, and I could not confirm that by myself, it seems that the Vlog is a little bit more efficient and less processor heavy compared to the F-Log, but honestly I did not see that many difference when it comes to the Mac M1 Pro that I have. Now let's talk about monitoring capabilities. Here what you have is custom LUT support to visualize directly what's going on with your footage. You also have histogram, vector, you have anamorphic discrete internally. If you're looking for monitoring tools within your camera, the Panasonic S5iiX is a better solution. I really hope that Fujifilm listened to this video and to all the feedback that they got, and that they look at this camera and bring pretty much, shutter angle, because that should be done by software easily, but also custom LUT, false colors, and other monitoring tools, because this is supposed to be kind of their cinema videography kind of tool, and it definitely lacks a little bit in terms of monitoring. Okay, so we talked a lot about both of these cameras. As you can see, both of the cameras have advantages and have drawbacks, right? And it really depends on what is important for you. If it's speed, if it's rolling shutter, if it's more custom modes, if you prefer the Fujifilm kind of feel, then go Fujifilm, right? But if you want the monitoring tools, if you want the direct output to SSD, then the Panasonic S5iiX is a better choice. But whatever you choose, I think that both of these cameras are great tools and that they will allow you to pretty much do whatever you want. Personally, I'm very happy with my Fujifilm X-H2S and I don't think that I need to change anything. I also have my Fuji lenses that I don't feel like I want to change. I'm already invested in the Fujifilm ecosystem, so I don't see myself changing anytime soon. Let me know down in the comment if you have any questions. Which one would you pick? Either the Fujifilm X-H2S or the Panasonic S5iiX? And if you missed it, check out this video right here where I review the XS20. See you there.